Good afternoon, sisters, brothers, and various others. This is John Karate, and we are back in business. My head is behind the header. First things first, I'm not doing live reactions to every episode anymore. I rethought it, and what I'm going to be doing is that after I do the screenshot live blog on Tumblr, you'll find the link here. But I'm going to be doing a sort of review recap of each episode after I'm done with the live blog, and I'll show my theories, I'll talk about it, what I liked and disliked, whatever. In the meantime, I'm going to give you what I'm going to dub the RWBYCap. I'm going to recap all the episodes I've watched thus far in Volume 1 and 2. I have notes here, that's why I'm looking off screen. I could prop this up here and make it look less silly. We start on Volume 1. No, we start with the trailers, actually. Let's start there. The red trailer. We start with Ruby at her mother's grave, I presume her mother's grave, and then she walks into the woods, gets attacked by wolves, and shows off her gun scythe. That's also another recursive gun. So basically it's just a proof of concept and a show off of what she can do. She's fast, she can use the gun to propel herself faster, she can use the scythe portion to prop up the gun as she's shooting, she can use it for momentum in general, and it then swings open so it can be used as a proper weapon. That's a thing that I did in the live blog where I just documented how all the guns were ridiculous. I can do that later on. White trailer. It's two parts. There's a past and a present, I guess. In the present, Weiss is singing an opera song in front of an audience. Not like she's practicing, she has to be in front of them. And then in the past, she's fighting a enchanted suit of armor or something like that, and also shows off her weapon. She has a rapier that has the chambers on a roulette gun thingy, and it'll change her element. And she also has the ability to produce these platforms that do things. There's a haste platform, a platform that just kind of hangs in the air, and then she can skate around, and basically she beats up a suit of armor, and she gets a scar on her eye. So, black trailer. Blake and Adam rob a train. It shows off Blake's weapon, it's probably the fifth most ridiculous thing. Is it the fifth? Fairly ridiculous. So it's a katana it's a gun that unfolds into a katana, which is not good, because what if it refolds while you're trying to hit something with it? And then after that, it has a whip attachment, makes it a kusarigami, and it can somehow shoot while it is on the other end of the whip. How does that work? I don't know. Yeah, so it's a katana gun whip kusarigami hybrid thing. And then Adam, which is his sword isn't that bad. It's just that his holster, his scabbard, is also a gun, and apparently he starts out every battle by firing his sword from the gun. I don't know. That one left me a little loopy for a little bit. Anyway, they're robbing the train of dust, and Adam's going to set the train to explode or something to that effect, and Blake is like, what about all the crew that are on the train? And he's like, screw them. And Blake is like, well, I can't do this, and she cuts off all the cargo so the crew will live, and I guess that's when she leaves the Black Fang as well. The White Fang. Then, yellow trailer, that's Yang. She walks up in the club, and holds down Junior, who gives Roman Torchwick his goons. And she's looking for someone, presumably her mother. And so she's like, what information do you have? And then, Junior has no information, and they get in a fight. And she has shotguns on her wrists. I don't know where the mechanisms are to actually fire these things, by the way. Magic, I guess. Basically, she can punch and fire at the same time, and she also uses it for propulsion and other stuff. She beats down Junior, and then these two Valley girls who aren't blonde try to fight her, and she beats them up. Somehow, someway, Junior gets a shotgun bat, and something happens to her hair, and she goes Super Saiyan, and she punches Junior right through a wall, and he somehow survives this. And then Ruby is there, and hey Ruby, hey Yang, and that's the end of the trailer. Volume 1. Episode 1 is Ruby Rose, where Roman is trying to rob a dust shop. RWBY stops him, shows off more of her gun things. She probably murders at least one guy because she totally, like, slammed the entire scythe on his rib cage. He doesn't have ribs anymore. But Roman escapes. He has a very conspicuous plane that was hidden in an alley and flying away with it. She tries to shoot the plane down, but then Cinder comes and shoots fire at her, but then Glinda comes out of the way and uses a shield, and they have a little caster fight, but Roman gets away. Yeah, and then later on, Glinda takes RWBY into custody, and then Ozpin, who is the headmaster of Beacon Academy, invites her to come in early, because she's 2 years younger than everyone else. I guess she's 14, everyone else is 16 or something like that. And then on the plane to Beacon, we meet Yang, who is RWBY's half-sister, and then there's a news report about Roman Torchwick and his involvement with the dust robberies, and then there's something about the White Fang. See, there is another species of humans or human-like individuals called Faunus. Faunus is the plural of Faunus. That doesn't make... I don't like that. I mentally switch out the vowel. So, like, one Faunus, many Faunas with an A. That's what I do, so I don't annoy myself to death. So basically, these Faunas are oppressed because they didn't invent black people till Volume 2, so they had to oppress someone. Like, the Faunas are being oppressed, and the White Fang is, like, putting on protests and destroying things and stealing dust. And then we also see our first shot of Jean, who is airsick. Yeah, that's our introduction to Jean. He's airsick and he's vomiting. I think he vomits on Yang's shoes. Next episode is The Shining Beacon. This is a two-parter. RWBY is basically a nerd for weapons. She sees everyone walking around with their weapon, and she's like, ah! And she goes chibi, and she's like flying around, and like, oh, look at this, look at that, look at that, look at that. Then Yang is like, hey, make some friends, and just like, disappears on her. RWBY literally bumps into Weiss, who is insufferable. Hey, you almost spilled my dust. She comes like shaking the dust crystals in RWBY's face for no reason and makes RWBY sneeze, and it was fire dust, so it explodes. And then Blake comes by, and she's like, oh, you're Weiss Schnee. Your father owns the dust company. That's what got all this dust. What are you? Like, she just like reads her immediately. I'm like, yes, I like this character. And then later on, RWBY talks to Jean, and they have no idea. Neither of them know how to interact with people at all. And she's like, weapons. And like, oh, no, yeah, weapons. And they talk about their weapons. And Jean is just sword and board, regular, no gun. Then in part 2, there's a sleepover because no one's assigned dorms yet. So everyone, huge sleepover in the middle of, I guess, the gymnasium. Jean is in footy pajamas. And then Weiss comes back and she's like, hey, I'll give you this, how to be safe around dust, when like Weiss caused incident in the first place. Again, I don't like her very much. And Blake is reading a storybook, and RWBY like, I want to be a huntress because of all these storybooks I've read. Yay! Episode 4 is the first step. We meet Ren and Nora. Nora's my sister, okay? I love her. She is amazing. Nora is bright and sunshiny, and Ren is like resigned to his fate. And then everyone's ready for the team, getting ready for the team placement exercises. We meet Pyranikos, who is a world-renowned fighter on a cereal box and everything. And the Weiss is like, I want to be on her team. For the placement exercise, they're over the woods, and they have to find a temple and bring back artifacts to pass. And then they get launched off of the cliff. The first step, part 2, everyone does cool landing stuff. Like RWBY like grabs a tree with her scythe, and Yang is just like flying around using her gun gauntlets as propulsion. Weiss has platforms, so she kind of cheats. Blake, do we see Blake? Maybe not. Pyrrha just tanks the landing immediately, by the way. She just like whoop, lands. And then she also helps Jean by giving up her spear, like pinning him to a tree so he doesn't, die. How it works is everyone, the first person who meets your eyes, you're teamed up. So, of course, RWBY gets teamed up with Weiss. Weiss is like, no, and tries to turn around, and she sees Jean. She's like, I'm going back this way. And then they get attacked by a bunch of Grimm. I think they're Ursa. Next one is the Emerald Forest, part 1. Yang is also fighting some Ursai. and they rip up her hair, and she goes Super Saiyan and Shoryukens and like a whole bunch of stuff. And then Blake like kills the last one for her, and I guess they're on a team now. And Ruby and Weiss aren't doing so well. They keep getting each other's way. Weiss accidentally starts a forest fire or something like that. Meanwhile, Pyrrha finally gets Jean down from the tree. She explains aura to him, and Ren does a fight along with the exposition. He fights this giant snake, and while she's talking about how aura works, and he's using his aura to fight, and then he meets Nora, and Nora beeps his nose, and I am thrust into Renora hell forever. Emerald Forest Part 2. Blake and Yang get to the checkpoint, but some of the artifacts are already taken. Jean aggravates a giant scorpion because he doesn't read the sign, and he gets thrown through the air. Then it ends with Ruby also flying through the air, and I'm remarkably confused. I think that was a 4-minute episode anyway. 8 is Players in Pieces. So Ruby was flying through the air, but because they were both hanging onto a giant bird, I think it's called a Nevermore. Now, Weiss is still on that bird. Jean, who is flying, collides with Ruby, who is also flying. And I have Nora Smash here in the notes. I think we just see her like fighting some bears or something. I don't know why I wrote that in there. I was mainly sleep deprived, I think. Anyway, Nora Smash. And then Weiss falls off of the bird finally, but Jean catches him, but he doesn't like catch her. He still ends up like flattened into the ground. There's a no capes thing because like the Nevermore does this really ridiculous thing where it can throw its feathers as if it doesn't need them to fly. Yeah, it can throw its feathers with enough speed and force to like pin things into the ground, and these are giant feathers. So, like, they're also really heavy. How does it fly with these heavy feathers? See what I'm talking about? Weiss saves her from the scorpion who attacked her while she was pinned down. But since everyone has their piece now, they just cut and run. But there's like only half the episode there. So JNPR, Jean, Nora, Pyrrha, Ren end up against the scorpion, and then the giant bird is against Team RWBY. The Nora basically does all the work on the scorpion. Like Pyrrha cuts off the stinger, but Nora like slams it into the ground. Slams it into its head. And then meanwhile, Team RWBY does this whole Rube Goldberg device slingshot thing. They freeze the bird and then launch RWBY at it, and then she runs up the wall and beheads it, and it looks really cool. And then the team announcements that basically Jean, Nora, Pyrrha, and Ren are Team Juniper, led by Jean, and then RWBY, Weiss, Blake, and Yang are Team RWBY, led by RWBY. And then Roman has plans. There's a map, and it's like cops and dumb cops, and everything's pointing to Beacon. Then it's the badge and the burden. This is also another two-parter. Volume 1 was a bunch of two-parters. Basically, Team RWBY do their dorm up properly. RWBY, like, slashes their curtains and then sews it back up for aesthetic, I guess. Weiss puts up like a painting, and Yang puts up a boy band poster, and I don't think Blake does anything, but she has this ninja romance book, and she looks really, really, really suspicious, like, oh no, you found me. RWBY is still trying to lead the group in her own RWBY kind of way, which doesn't always work. Case in point, they're late to class and everyone has to run. Their class is like grim biology or something to that effect. And basically a demonstration, someone has to fight the thing the teacher caught. So Badge and the Burden Part 2. Weiss is fighting the thing the teacher caught. Let's see how quick that was. And it's like a warthog. I don't even know. It's called a boom something, but it just looks real. It looks cool. But it's really stupid because it does this weird Sonic the Hedgehog spinny thing. And then it also manages to disarm Weiss with its tusks, which I still don't understand. RWBY is like, hey, Weiss, you should stab it in the stomach. And Weiss is like, shut up, and then stabs it in the stomach. Weiss doesn't respect RWBY at all. And she's like, Professor Ozpin made a mistake. And then Ozpin shows up right there. And meanwhile, Ozpin talks to RWBY, and Weiss talks to Professor Weiss says like, I should have been the leader, and like, but like, you know, that wouldn't make a good acronym. First of all, how would you do that? But Porter's like, no, listen, Professor Osborn knows what he's doing. You're just a child. Sit your ass down. And he becomes my favorite professor immediately. Yes, anyone that yells at Weiss is my favorite, by the way. Professor Ozpin is like, I chose you to be a leader because I saw the potential in you. I don't know if I made a mistake. That's for you to decide. And as it turns out, at the end scene, RWBY is like actually doing her studying and working and trying to work things out. And Weiss brings RWBY a coffee to signify, hey, I'm going to listen. I want to respect you as leader, blah, blah, blah. The next part is what I like to call the Jean arc. See, the joke is that his name is Jean Arc, and it's an arc about Jean. And so basically in Jaundice, Jean is having trouble being a leader because he sucks. And then Carden, this redheaded boy in like armor, and he has a mace that explodes. He's a bully and a jerk, and he does things all the time. Like he shoves John into the lockers, and he like activates his like spring-loaded shield, trap him in the door, and all sorts of nonsense. And in part 2, John is also having trouble for help, but doesn't want to ask for help. What did I just say? John is having trouble in school, but doesn't want to ask anyone for help because he's supposed to be the big macho leader, right? That's kind of his thing. But so Pyrrha tries to help me. He's like, you think I need help? And like, he definitely does. There's some more fauna stuff with Professor Oobleck. Faunas can see in the dark. Later at night, John admits to Pyrrha that he cheated his way into Beacon. He found some transcripts or did some nonsense. I'm pretty sure Ozpin knows he did, but let him in anyway because like that's some kind of skill. It's not like he bumbled upon them, right? So Carden overhears this and blackmails John is doing all his work for him. Then in Forever Fall, you know, Jean is doing all of Team Cardinal's work, or Cardinal, or whatever, and he's like he's ignoring his own team because like he might get kicked out of Beacon otherwise. And then they go on a field trip to collect some sap, and Carden wants to prank Pyrrha because he's a jerk. He had Jean go rustle up some wasps. I don't know if they're grim wasps or they're just regular wasps. He's supposed to throw this syrup, the sap, onto Pyrrha, and the wasp would sting her and probably kill her because there's a lot of wasps in that box. But John is like, no. He grows a spine and throws the jar at Carden. And, well, that's where the episode ends. But in part 2, it begins with Jean being beat up. Then an Ursa shows up and all of Carden's team runs away. And then Jean, like, he activates his aura and heals himself, and he fights the Ursa. And Pyrrha helps because she has metal bending powers, so she moves his shield in the way to block an attack. But he fights the rest of it his own way, and he wins. That one thing didn't that doesn't take away from his victory, you know. But Jean finally puts Carden in his place and starts training with Pyrrha to be a proper swordsman, which is great. And now it's the Stray. There's more dust robberies going on, and everything points to the White Fang. This is one thing I had a real problem with, because it's fairly obvious to me that the faunas represent, like, people who aren't white. Tell me I'm wrong. I mean, come on. The one faunus on the group is represented by the color black. Weiss is being very racist towards these faunas, and it's not like she's... Okay, see, here's the thing. There's a difference between the White Fang as a group, but she's talking about the individuals within that group and like painting them with like the entire thing. Okay, the White Fang is stealing, right? But like, she's like, all faunas are thieves and murderers, and that is where the line is. And Blake, I don't like that. Blake doesn't like it. So anyway, that was my phone. They meet a monkey faunus who is stowed away on the ship, and he runs off. And they can't find him, but they do find Penny, who is also my little sister. She wants to help them, and she's combat ready, and she's really cute, but they find her really creepy. RWBY calls her a friend, and she's like, oh, we're friends now? Yay! And Weiss and Blake are still having this argument. It goes on until they actually get back to Beacon, and then Weiss accidentally reveals that she is a faunus, and then she runs away. Okay, black and white, last part of Volume 1. Blake has been missing for a couple of days, holed up with Sun. Penny helps Team RWBY look for Blake. Blake and Sun are staking out a dust delivery to see if the White Fang shows up to, steal it. So it turns out Roman Torchwick is working with the White Fang to steal all this dust. Blake and Sun fight Roman. Blake does her shadow clone thing. Well, I guess they're not shadow clones since they're not solid, but they're illusory clones, I guess. Sun has a staff that first of all fires from both ends, right? And then it splits and it becomes nunchucks that also have guns on them. He has a set of gunchucks, and it is the most ridiculous thing you see in Volume 1. Hands down. And then RWBY shows up, but Roman knocks her out because she looks away. And then Penny is there with her, and she's like, oh no, you hurt my friend. Now I have to destroy you. And she has like these knives in her back, and she controls them telekinetically, I presume, or magnetically probably. And she like throws the knives everywhere, and pretty much all those guys that got hit are dead. And then she shoots a giant Kamehameha wave. Yeah. And then, at the end of the day, Weiss doesn't apologize, but she's like, you know what? You're one of the good ones. Like, that's what Weiss says. You're one of the good ones, okay? Wow, I've been here for half an hour talking? Here's what we're going to do. This is the wrap-up for Volume 1. It was... For the production quality, that obviously it didn't have a lot of budget. All the budget went into the fight scenes, and then you had, like, 5 cents, a paperclip, and some pocket lint for everything else. So it cut a lot of corners where it needed to cut them, but it did produce a good quality work at the end of the day. It was a fun story. I liked all the characters except for Weiss. Well, I like Weiss as a character, but I don't like Weiss as a person. Like, Weiss as a character made me feel certain things, and while her attitude toward faunas is not addressed, I'm pretty sure it's never going to be addressed again. In fact, if at any point in Volume 3 or Volume 4 Weiss's attitude toward faunas is addressed and like spoken towards and like it actually brought up as a problem, I will go on YouTube live and karaoke to any meme song you guys want. Anyone, okay? Quote me on that. Anyway, I liked the characters. I liked how I especially liked Penny and Nora. They're fun. All the characters are fun, but Penny and Nora are like the greatest. And the action scenes, Monty Ohm, R.I.P., was a genius when he came to it. He knows how to shoot an action scene. He knows how to animate, and that's what really grabbed me. Aside from the story is building here. I liked how the conflict is building. You see the conflict within the group and then from outside the group as well, and how it affects the in-group relationship. That's an important thing. I liked the setting. I'm interested in the setting. What happened to the moon? Why is the moon in fragments? Did someone shoot a giant aura Kamehameha at the moon? I like the fact that they're basically living in a post-zombie apocalypse world when you think about it, because the Grimm are basically zombies. And, well, I was looking forward to Volume 2. It took me a while. It's still taking me a while. I finished Volume 2 in like 3 months ago, probably. I've just been sitting here trying to get my computer fixed and stuff. Anyway, that's it for this video. See you in the next one for RWBYCap Volume 2, which should be up shortly, maybe. And then I can continue Volume 3 at my Tumblr, which you will find here, and linked in the description below. Have a good day.